Hello and new moon blessings, everybody. Welcome to my channel. My name is Kelsey. Today I'm going to guide you through a yin yoga practice that you can do in honor of a new moon in Scorpio. So we can learn a lot about the overall theme of a moon cycle based on what astrological sign the moon is passing through at the various stages of its cycle. And so I'm assuming that if you chose to practice this video that you might be under a new moon in Scorpio. So I'll just take a moment to talk about what that might mean. The moon is said to represent our subconscious, our mind, our emotions, our psyche. And so it is thought that when we're in a new moon, we are entering into a new cycle that is bringing in new ideas, new intentions, new information. Because this is the beginning of a cycle and the moon is dark, it is not totally clear exactly how things are going to land, how things are going to manifest. So it is best during the new moon phase to turn inward and observe what is coming up for us naturally internally, rather than trying to label things or trying to make things happen. With that said, it can be helpful to look at what sign the moon is passing through just to get an idea of the theme of that moon phase. So in this instance, we are looking at a new moon in Scorpio. When the moon is in Scorpio, we might be looking to go a little bit deeper than we would during other new moons. Scorpio is associated with deep, penetrating emotions that can bring really great healing. Scorpio has this unearthing, excavating kind of energy. So sometimes things can come up that we thought we had healed and moved past, and through that we can find a new layer of healing around whatever that is. So if you happen to be sensing something that is kind of bubbling beneath the surface and needs to be expressed or released, the new moon Scorpio is inviting you to lean into that. For our asana practice today, we're practicing Yin Yoga poses, specifically a lot of hip openers that will encourage us to let go of tension that is stored or suppressed in the body. So let's go ahead and begin in tadpole, which is extended child's pose. And I am going to pad my knees with a blanket. You can also see here I have a lot of props nearby. I have my bolster, I have my block. So if you have these kinds of props, please bring them to your mat. If you do not have these types of props, just grab any blanket, any old blanket that you have laying around your house, and maybe a couch cushion or a couple of bed pillows that you can stack on top of each other to give you a little bit more support in a couple of the poses. So for tadpole, knees are going wider than the width of the hips. The wider the knees go, the deeper sensation you're going to feel. Hips are sitting back towards the heels, and then reaching your hands forward, lowering your forehead down to the mat, and starting to soften and breathe here. And so again, with the Scorpio new moon, we are being asked to look inward and to observe the bigger emotions, the deeper emotions, without judgment, with compassion, and so during these Yin Yoga poses, sometimes emotions start to get released, and we can bring in that same compassionate, that non-judgmental observer mindset into each pose. And just because we are being asked to go deep doesn't mean that we need to suffer. There may be discomfort, but if you can't breathe in a pose, or you're clenching every muscle in your body in order to remain in the pose, that's your sign that you have gone too deep. It's much more beneficial to go deep one little bit at a time instead of just diving right in. Especially in terms of our yin asanas, less is more. Another breath in. Exhale out with a sigh. Next breath in, lift your head, look towards your hands. Exhale to shift forward back into tabletop pose. From here, I'm going to move my blanket off to the left side of my mat. And then also, I'm going to grab my bolster and bring it onto my mat going the long ways. We're moving into frog pose. So this can be a lot of pressure on the knees. If you find that it's too much pressure on the knees, you're gonna come down into a sphinx pose. So your elbows are underneath your shoulders and your belly is down on your mat. And then you're just gonna bend one knee out at a time. And I'll let you know whenever it's time to switch sides if you're taking that option. So for frog pose, I'm going to have the bolster between my hands. I'm going to step my right knee to the outer edge of the mat and then step my left knee onto the blanket and then let that blanket slide away from me as I lower my belly and my chest and one side of my head down onto the support of the prop. So it's important in frog pose that the knees stay in the same alignment as the hip. So your hips are not going behind the knees or ahead of the knees. They're in the same plane of alignment. Big stretch for the inner thighs and the groin. Try to soften your glutes. Notice how that translates to the lower back. Taking deep breaths in and long releasing breaths out. If you decided to take the half frog with the belly down, switch out the legs. We're here for just a little while longer. Notice how the mind begins to wander, to run away from uncomfortable sensations or emotions. Come back to the present, come back to what you're experiencing in your body. One more breath in. And exhale. If you're in half frog and your sphinx, you're going to bend that knee in and then press up to table. If you're in frog pose, pressing into the hands, slide the left knee in, both knees back under the hips. And then you can move whatever props you were using out of the way. It might feel good to extend one leg back at a time, stretching out the calves. And then from here, making our way into our swan pose. Starting on the right side, I'm going to walk my hands a little bit ahead of where they were previously, sliding right knee behind right wrist, point right toes towards the left, and then heel toe your left leg back. So you want to be sure that that left leg is in the same alignment as the left hip, so you might take a look back and make sure that it's there. You are welcome to stay up onto your hands if this is where your edge is today, or you can bring forearms down to the mat. I really like to place the block underneath my rib cage and then stacking my forearms or my hands and resting my head down. So another big hip opener here. It's been said that emotions are stored in the hips. This is the area of our root chakra, as well as our sacral chakra. My root chakra is our sense of safety and security. Sacral chakra, our sense of creativity, sensuality. And so it's interesting because in order for us to connect to that creativity, to imagine a different future for ourselves, a more healed, authentic future for ourselves, we have to first feel safe, right? We have to first be in alignment with that root chakra. And so consider if pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, again, diving into the deep end right away, is that really serving you? Or just meeting the emotions that are coming up with that grace, with that compassion, gentleness. Maybe that would be more effective for you today. Next breath in, lift your head. Exhale, press into your hands, start to rise up. Let's heel toe the left leg in, and then slide your right knee back. Maybe you tick-tock your hips side to side here, or around in circles. And then from here, we're going to move to the next side. Left knee behind left wrist, Toes are pointing towards the right, your swan pose. Walk the right leg back. Maybe just take a glance back. Make sure that the knee and the ankle are in alignment with the right hip. And squaring your hips down towards the mat. Maybe you stay onto your hands today if this is where your edge is. Or you can bring the block underneath the ribs or underneath the forearms. Maybe you stack your hands and let your head rest down onto your hands. That way you can really relax your neck, relax shoulders. Making sure there's no clenching in the jaw or the hands. Staying focused on your breath, on the sensations happening in your body. Letting emotions rise to the surface and letting them go as you feel ready. Take another breath in and out. Next breath in, lifting your head, walking onto your hands. And this time, let's just lean onto the left hip and swing that right leg around. You might take a moment to lean back on your hands now, extending the legs out in front of you. And then just wiggle out the legs in whatever way feels good. So maybe pointing and flexing the toes, or tick-tocking the toes, or just shaking it out. From here, we're laying down onto our backs. So I'm just turning myself around. You can use your hands behind the thighs to slowly recline down, moving anything that obstructs your comfort out of the way. And then take a little pause and constructive rest when you arrive. Notice the effect of those poses so far in your body. And then cross your right thigh over your left thigh. And bring your knees in, moving into a reclined shoelace. So some like to hold on to the knees, or you could wrap your hands around the thighs, holding the legs in close like so. We're targeting the outside of the hips, so you want to feel a sensation in the outside of the hips or the glutes. If this feels good, but it's not quite as sensational as what you're looking for today, you can slide your hands down the shins, holding on to the ankles, or maybe even the sides of your feet, and pulling your legs in opposite directions. So you can see my heels are lifted away from my glutes. And then letting the arms be heavy to draw the legs down. And so you can stay here with the heels elevated away from the hips, or sometimes it might feel nice to let the heels rest down. It's about your edge, your body. What experience are you looking for? How deep do you want to go? Notice if, as the intensity picks up in the pose, if you start to maybe kind of freak out a little bit internally, mentally. I know that in some of these yin postures, I start to clench my jaw, my breath shortens, my mind races. Just observing what your response is to a little bit of stress, a little bit of discomfort. The last couple of breaths. As you exhale, let go of what you're holding on to. Keep the legs crossed, but let that left foot return down to the mat. And then we're going to press into the left foot, scoot your hips over to the right a little bit, and then let both of your legs with the thighs crossed move over to the left for a twist. Right arm out beside you. And so this is called twisted roots. If there's any pulling in the outside of the right leg or discomfort in the hips or the knees, you can uncross and just do this with your legs stacked on top of each other. Another breath in. Let something go as you breathe out. Slowly uncross your legs, bring the legs back to upright, and then scoot your hips back to the center of your mat. Pause in your constructive breath. Notice how that right hip feels compared to the left. And then this time we'll cross left thigh over right, moving into the shoelace pose. Knees come in, maybe holding on to your knees here, looking for some sensation in the outsides of the hips. Perhaps you slide your hands to the outsides of the ankles or the feet. Going to your edge, reconnect with your breath. Notice what this pose is bringing up for you internally. The last few breaths. Recommit to your breath, to the pose. Next exhale, letting go. Right foot returns down to the mat. Press into the right foot to shift your hips towards the left, and then keeping the legs crossed, just letting both knees drop over to the right, reaching your left arm out beside you. One more breath in. And as you exhale, uncrossing your legs, floating them back up, and wiggling about, maybe tick-tocking your knees side to side, maybe pulling the legs in for a big hug. Whatever you think would feel good here after those deep hip openers. Eventually making your way into your shavasana of choice. And so if you have a bolster or a pillow, you could bring it underneath your legs, your knees. If you have a blanket or another pillow, bringing it beneath your head. Getting out any last little wiggles before we take a few moments here to rest in stillness and silence. You'll hear my voice whenever it's time to come back into this space. Enjoy your shavasana. Remaining just as you are, bring your awareness back to your breath. When you feel ready, start to wiggle your fingers and your toes, wrists and ankles, nodding your head side to side, letting these movements get larger with time until eventually they expand into a big full body stretch. Breathe in to stretch. Breathe out, let it go. And then when you're ready, pull your knees into a big hug. Take a few rocks side to side. Eventually let that land you onto one side before you press your way up and meet me in a comfortable seat. There's no hurry. Whenever you arrive, softening your eyes down, acknowledging how you feel. Take note of anything that came up for you during your practice that might serve as an intention for this next moon cycle. Maybe something around the themes of deep healing going past the surface. And with a sense of gratitude in our hearts, palms together in front of the heart, we'll close together by taking a chant of Om. Wherever you are with your breath, empty out the lungs, breathe out. Take a breath in and exhale to chant Om. Thank you all so much for being here today and sharing your practice with me. I hope that this practice has served you well. Please leave me a comment below letting me know how it went for you. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please do. I put out new classes every Sunday, and then sometimes for special occasions, I will put out another one in the middle of the week. So again, thank you. I hope that we can practice together again very soon. And until then, namaste.